Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Android application development install. About 2 hours ago I stopped part 1 and now part 2 is starting, and it took about 2 hours I guess on my slow to average connection to download all of the different packages. And what happened here is now I'm at 100% or 99% it looks like, or close to finishing all the download, and I've got an Adb Restart screen that has shown up on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and press yes on this. This message basically, probably can read it now on the screen here. It says a package that depends on Adb has been updated. Do you want to restart ABD? That's the Android development system that runs in the background as a service. Do I want to restart it? Sure, why not? I'm going to press yes on it. It doesn't really matter what you press on it because we're going to essentially install Eclipse next and restart everything. So now what I've been presented here is with a log, and the log is from the Android Sdk Manager log from the download. So it was done loading packages, and what I just did is installed a bunch of packages. So now I can go back and take a look at that error that I saw earlier and see if it really was even an error. What I'm looking at here is kind of a log of what happened. It doesn't really matter if you look at the log or not, but I'm just sort of curious because this is kind of interesting to me. If I take a look at it, it looks like it found all of the platform APIs that I was looking for in the samples I was looking for, and it just basically showing me what I've installed. I installed practically everything from the beginning, all of the different and lower versions of the SDK. Here's that error message, I think, or that thing that came up earlier. It wasn't really an error message. Now I see it was just the Adb that was killed during the install because probably was updating something. So now I see that wasn't an error message. Nothing failed earlier. So everything looks to and appears to be in order. Even if I found something in here, it basically would tell me to rerun this if that were the case. So that was that message that came up a few minutes ago. I stopped the daemon, I started it again. So now it says I'm done loading the packages. So what I've done, I'm going to press this closed window. What I've done is I just selected everything here, and all of the lower, even the current and plus the lower packages. And now you can see under the status window they're all installed. Before it was said it was not installed. What is this one? This one says it's not compatible with Windows. That's because it's for a Google TV. It looks like I don't have that platform. I'm not going to worry about it. Not installed down here with some dual screen APIs. It looks like some Real 3D by LGE. Probably some old stuff. Didn't really need it. I see some, more of this other older screen stuff, but most of the packages that I selected, actually all of them, it looks like the important ones, were installed. So if you see a lot of not installed over here on the basic platform packages, I would run it again. So there's one here that says delete one package. I'm just going to leave that alone, actually. And instead, at this point, what I'm going to do is just close the Sdk Manager because I'm done with it, essentially. And this is a window that it looks like a DOS window in the background. I'm just going to close that one too. Looks like it was started along with the Sdk Manager. And now I'm going to go back to my instructions and pick up where I left off. While I was busy waiting for my, or I shouldn't say busy, while I was bored waiting for my install to finish, I fixed my typo here on my instructions on step 8. If you're watching the first part of the video, I typed in this incorrectly. But anyway, I fixed my typos and kind of added an hour or longer with a medium slow connection to this point. But that was the step number 8 that just finished. And so now we're on step number 9. Step number 9 is when the SDK finishes, click on available package. Oh, we just did that. So we did step number 8, and then we also did step number 9. What do we have here? When the download SDK finishes, okay, click on available packages. We did that. Click on the box to select the link shown. We are kind of done with all that stuff, and we did what we were supposed to have done. Actually, the step number 9. I don't believe step number 9 was actually part of it, but let's go take a really quick look here to see if there's anything I missed from that. I believe that the install has changed actually to remove that step. Let me just verify that. I'm going back into Android and I want to just take a look at the Sdk Manager one more time to kind of see if we had actually completed that. So it's loading it. So what I did is what I'm doing is I'm just verifying that I did install all of the packages. So, and looks like there's no available package option here anymore. So we're good. We're very good here. So we installed the available packages. So I'm going to close this again. Alright, so we did number 8 and number 9 together, actually. So now in number 10, I'm going to download and install Eclipse, the current version, then select the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. So if I cut and paste this URL here, stick it into my web browser out in Windows. Let's go back to my web browser. And I am going to paste it here. Now the last time I installed Eclipse, I believe I installed the Helios version. It looks like we're up to Indigo now. You can see Indigo on the screen here. What you're faced with in here, let me back out here a little bit so you can kind of see what the interface looks like. Eclipse, it's the IDE that we're going to use, and according to my instructions, it says select the one for Java developers. So that's the IDE for Java developers. It's the top one. And we have IDEs for the EE developers, for Classic. Classic isn't going to give you Java tools. It's just going to be the basic IDE. It's going to be the smallest download. Actually, Java developers is going to be the smallest download. We have one for C++, for JavaScript. If you kind of go through it, you kind of see there's lots of good support for different environments. But what we want, and as of the making of this video, Indigo was the most current. I know this works with Helios and some of the previous versions as well. So if you already have Eclipse installed on your computer, you may not need to install it again. But you want to make sure you have the Java tools, the version that supports the Java tools. So I'm looking at this top one here, and I'm going to select the Windows 32-bit version of it to install, because I'm working on a Windows XP 32-bit system. And now I'm going to go to the mirrored site, I believe. You know what? Yeah, let's see. I've got some choices. If I go down here, I'm going to choose one of these mirrors close to me. I'm going to choose United States. Let's see if there's anybody out there. And I'm going to save it. Oh, it appears to be working. I'm going to save it on the desktop. And again, this is another zipped file, so we'll have to unzip the file, and we'll have to install the information. So. And again, it's another big one, but I think I can be patient, actually, and wait for this one. Sometimes these downloads start a little slow, and then they end up running a little bit faster halfway in the middle. And this one seems to be picking up a little bit, which is good. So I'll give this a few minutes before I give up and pause the video. So let's see what's going on. So according to our instructions, now I'm getting bored, we are going to uncompress and then we're going to copy the Eclipse folder to the hard drive. And then we're going to install the Android packages in Eclipse. And this is really the last step of the install. And we'll see how this works with this newer version. So this is really a kind of a live test. And then when we get all done, we'll create a project in Eclipse and make sure that everything works correctly. So we're up to step number 11. There's only 14 steps to this whole thing. So let's see how I'm going to go back to my install of Eclipse. Here. I'm not doing too bad. We're at 21%, almost halfway there. You can pause the video if you don't want to listen to me ramble. I'm not going to pause it. I'm just going to keep it going. Just for sakes of keeping this all together in just a couple of tutorials. We're getting there, 24 or 25%. See, now it's speeding up a little bit, which is good. So, as I was saying before, it kind of, some of these start slow and then they start going faster towards the middle. But I guess we could cruise around the the video site, I mean the Eclipse website. Nothing really too good here. It is free. It looks like it's asking for some donation via PayPal. You don't actually have to donate, but it's if you want to keep the support going. It is amazing what is available by open source software these days. Well, it looks like there's a lot of download sites too, just getting all over the world. I guess given my time zone, I perhaps maybe not have selected the United States. Maybe I would have gotten one a little quicker. Yeah, we're at 37%. We're getting there. Pause the video or fast forward if you don't want to listen to me. So, or hopefully your download is going at the same time and you're racing with me maybe to see if your download is going to finish before mine. Probably will, actually. I've got a lot of stuff going on this computer right now. So the install is actually quite easy for Eclipse. It's very similar to the Android one, where we unzip it and we copy the folder into the Explorer, put it on the hard drive somewhere. And I'm actually going to put it in its own separate directory. The good thing sort of about Eclipse is that we don't have to set the path for that actually. We can just set the executable, works for us. So when I compress it, we copy the folder in there onto the hard drive, and we install the Android packages into Eclipse. So let's see how Eclipse is doing here. Yeah, 52%, almost done. We're getting there. Accordingly, it says 3 minutes left. We'll see. So just sit here at this screen for a few more minutes. One of the interesting things about the Android development is no matter how fast your computer is running, the little simulator that simulates the Android phone runs very slowly, or it did in the previous APIs. So I'm kind of curious to see if it runs any faster. I haven't tried out 4.0 yet, but one of my biggest complaints about some of the 3 and the 2 and the 1, and from the beginning, is that the simulation of the phone, and because you don't actually need an Android phone to do any of this stuff. You can use the simulator and on a Mac or on a PC, and no need to go out and buy an Android phone. Obviously, if you want to port the application out and see it work, you're going to need to find a phone to test it with. But for purposes of development, no phone is needed. But the simulator runs very slowly, actually. And it takes longer to, you can't really bypass the simulator, kind of, just say, hey, I'm just going to test it on the phone instead of using the simulator. Because it actually takes longer to do that than it does to test it on the simulator. So, because you got to, get it out to the phone. And I'll go through that in another video further down the road. And I'll put it on a Droid phone. Droid X actually is what I've got. So. But it works with any Android phone. You can actually design the simulator to work with any one of the models as well. There's a couple of different models to have it work with. And I'll be actually kind of curious also myself to see if they've added the tablet API interface, which I'm going to assume is added, but we'll kind of wait and see. That way you can export it out to maybe a phone or a tablet. Maybe that'll be a universal kind of interface, who knows. But we'll see. This is my first look at the 4.0 API, which it's only been out a couple months, so I'm not too late on it, so it's pretty good. Catching it right at the beginning. So 85%, we're almost done. Which is good. I'm running out of things to say. 86%. I guess I could have paused the video. 87. It's like watching water boil. What do they say? Never watch it because it goes slowly. This is going pretty fast. So in preparation, because we're 10% away. We are after the download. After we download it, which is what we're doing right now. This link, we're going to uncompress and then copy the Eclipse folder to your hard drive. So I'm going to do that step next, and then install the packages into Eclipse. So I'm getting this set up so that we can go to step number 12 as soon as I copy it. So we're practically at the end. And again, I'm going to use the Windows utility to unzip it, and then I'm just going to take the folder and copy it. And I'm probably just going to stick it off with the roots, or maybe I'll put it in program files. And I'll put it in program files, make it easier. And then I'll create a link and put it on the desktop. Alright, so the download has been completed successfully. I'm going to press close. And on my desktop, lo and behold, I see the link, and I'm going to extract all. And I'm going to press next, next again, and extract out everything here. Eclipse is a great IDE. Even if you're not doing Android development, you're just developing just regular old Java applications. It works great for that too. Some people out there might be thinking that they want to use NetBeans. You may. However, the install is not quite as easy. And you'll see how easy this integrates into the menuing system in a few minutes. I've never tried it with NetBeans because I don't like NetBeans. The reason why I don't like it is because it doesn't run as fast. However, beginning students have a tendency to find that NetBeans to them is sometimes easier to understand. So you might want to experiment with it if this is going to cause you a problem. I just pressed on OK, and I pressed OK to the link that asked me if I wanted to open up the archived uncompressed file. Inside of the file that I uncompressed, I have an Eclipse directory. I'm going to take this and just pull it out here because it's inside of it. And then this one's empty now, so I'm going to throw that one away if I can throw it away correctly. And I'm going to throw the zip file away because I don't need it. What I have is this Eclipse directory, and in the Eclipse directory there's the executable right there, and we have everything else going on. So what I'm going to do is open up my file manager again, my Windows Explorer, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see what I'm doing. I've got the Eclipse folder. I'm going to go into my computer, I'm going to go to C drive, I'm going to go to program files, and I'm going to drag it and put it right into program files. So I'm going to just take it out of here and drop it. And then lo and behold, I've got Eclipse. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a shortcut. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say create a shortcut. The shortcut's probably at the bottom here. Let's see if I can. There we go. Just drag it this way a little bit, and just drag the shortcut out to the Windows desktop. And I am going to shut this now. So now I have a Windows shortcut here. Empty my trash out, clean things up a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to just put this on my taskbar. Actually, I'm going to drag it down to my taskbar. There we go. Lock the taskbar again, throw this one away. Alright, so now I'm all cleaned up and ready to start Eclipse in the next step. I've got Eclipse installed correctly. Well, I'm going to find out shortly. So what I'm going to do now is just come down to the bottom here. I made that shortcut, went down, and I put it on my taskbar. What is this? This is that old window. I'm going to close this window. Close the window. Now I'm going to run Eclipse. And I'm going to run Eclipse by just clicking on that icon. And I'm going to get a window security thing. And it's going to ask me if I want to run it. So sure, run it. There we go. So now I got Eclipse Indigo starting up here. This is normal. You'll see a little window. The little window kind of sits there. And it kind of says, on the first time you install it, it actually kind of has to configure itself. So it wants to know about the workspaces. So you pick a spot where you're going to want to store your files, and the default location is Documents and Settings Owner Workspace. I'm going to change this because I don't like that. Instead, I'm going to put everything in Program Files. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say Program Files Workspace. You know what? I could probably do one better and put it inside of Eclipse, actually. Yeah, let me do that, actually. Eclipse. The only problem is I'm probably going to spell it wrong. Yeah. Let's see. So what I'm doing is I'm specifying the workspace directory to be, let's see, Program Files, Eclipse. I'm going to put it in here. So my workspace is going to end up in here. My workspace directory is going to hold all my projects. Not a bad idea, only because this will keep kind of things together, and I don't usually use documents and settings or anything. I'm actually not really a big Windows user. I'm more of a Mac user. So I got Program Files, Eclipse workspace. Use this as the default and do not ask again. I'm going to click this little button here so I don't keep getting asked. And I just want to make sure I've spelt this correctly. Eclipse. And let me just make sure this is not capitalized actually as well. Otherwise I just want to try to avoid error messages. No, Eclipse is not capitalized, so I'm good. I'm going to press OK now on this box. And hopefully I'm going to, and you see on the bottom, you see like a little green status bar that's coming through. Let's see, it doesn't really show you very much at all. It's just kind of a splash screen. And then every time I load it, it's going to load a little bit faster. So I've got the Eclipse out here, and the first time you load Eclipse after you install it, you get this, welcome to the IDE for Java developers, and you click on this stuff and you can watch all sorts of stuff, tutorials, workbenches, all the stuff. We actually want to go to the workbench, that's where I was before though, but you can get an overview of the features, what's new, stuff like that. But if we click this one over here, we'll just go to the workbench, and here's the workbench. And I don't actually like looking at all this stuff. I'm kind of a minimalist, as I mentioned before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of close the screen over here and close the task list over here. And the Package Explorer is kind of a good feature because then this will show you all the files, and then the files open up over here. And then this you want to keep as well because this is going to give you your output when you run programs and stuff like that. But this is what the main IDE actually kind of looks like, and I'll zoom it in a little bit because I'm going to start looking at the menu in a second. But what we're looking at is, a basic, kind of looks like Notepad actually. It's kind of like why I like it. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of basic. So it's not like overwhelming. And then now if I shut it, I'm going to say, always exit without prompt. I'm just going to close. I'm going to load it back up again. Just don't always ask me that question. And then should hopefully run a little faster this time, but we'll see. It shouldn't take as long. There it goes. Yeah, it's not taking as long. But again, I do have a lot of stuff loaded on this computer. It might run a little bit faster on yours. Hey, it doesn't. See, I think NetBeans takes a little bit longer to load, actually. But anyway, it's loaded up, so we can move on to the next step. The next step is going to be to install the Android packages in the Eclipse. So we're going to click on the menu now. And it's going to be, click the menu, Help, Install New Software. And then enter in this particular URL. So I'm going to cut this here. I'm going to copy it so I can paste it into the location. So menu, help, install new software. So I'm going to go here, and it kind of seems like a typo, but it isn't. Help, and then it says install new software. So per the instructions, I'm going to the help menu. Make it a little bigger so you can see it. And I'm going to install new software. I'm not going to check for an update because I just updated this thing. I just installed it. It's got to be up to date, right? But I'm going to set install new software. And then it's going to say type or select a site. I'm going to backspace here, and I'm going to paste in that URL that I copied out of there. And I copied that URL, out of here. Make this a little smaller. Install the Android packages. Enter this here into the location field, and then click on the Add button. Install all of the developer tools. So I'm going to go back to Windows. I'm going to click. This is the Add button that the instructions are talking about. So work with this location, add it, and I'm just going to use the URL as the name again. So it doesn't really matter what you use. You can put your own name there if you want, but yeah, it helps you understand and remember what's there. It's going to go out to this location as it's doing right now, and it says pending right now. So we'll give it a few minutes. Now it says developer tools. Right, click on that little plus sign. It'll open it up and show me Android, traceable, stuff like that. DDMS. Well, you don't have to open it up. I just select the whole thing. Install them all, essentially. Or you can say select all. There you go. And then on the bottom of the screen, there's going to be a next here. So you can click on next. I just leave all these here, you know, show only the latest version of software. That's fine. All of the other kind of features. What this is going to do is it's going to install the development tools inside of Eclipse and make them available as menu options so that we can create applications and stuff. So I'm going to go next. And on the bottom, this is going to run a little bit faster. It's not going to take you 2 or 3 hours because we've already done that part. So I've got some status that came out, install details, to review the items to be installed. Here they are. I'm going to go next. It's going to have a little, you know, accept. So you can see on the bottom here, after you have read all of the information, I'm going to go accept. And then I'm going to click on finish. And then what I've got now is a little dialog box that showed up. It says installing software. This is not going to take as long. The longest step was installing those packages for Android. This isn't going to take as long. As you can see, it's practically, according to the status indicator, about halfway there already. So while this is going on, I'm going to go back to our instructions. Oh no, I'm going to have a security warning here. You're installing software that contains unsigned content. Oh, that doesn't matter. Do you want to continue? Say OK. And it's a Windows XP security thing. So it has nothing to do with the software. So you will need to restart Eclipse for the installation changes to take effect. Do you want to restart now, or apply changes now, or not now? Well, you can do this a couple of different ways. Because I'm recording this through a Mac partition, I can, well actually I'm not going to restart Windows, I'm just going to restart Eclipse, so it's not really a problem. I'm going to say restart now. So I press the button, and now Eclipse is going to come up. I guess we should have done it before and after, but you know, on the menus to see where the Android stuff is going to come in. But you're going to see it. It's going to look kind of obvious to you in a few minutes. But so now we're back, and we've got a little screen here. It says welcome to Android development. We want to configure the SDK. Okay. So we can install a new SDK, install the latest available version of Android APIs that's supported by this latest feature. Now this is not entirely new. This is not exactly what we did with Android. Instead, it's installing it into the Eclipse IDE to make it available. We're going to just leave the default on there. It says install new SDK and go next. And then I'm not going to send my usage statistics to Google. But you can, if you want. I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to say finish. Now what it's doing is it's installing that Android SDK Manager. And what we're going to do here is basically just go with the current, we're going to get everything. Right? Basically, it's going to find it on our computer already and tell us, or maybe it won't tell us, and it'll just install it, whatever happens to be missing, if anything is missing, which means this is not going to take very much time. But it's basically set for the SDK package. Let's just say accept all here in terms of the agreements and stuff, and install. And now it's basically taking the SDK platform tools that come with a 4.0, and it's installing them in, which looks like a duplicate of what we've already done, but we're putting them into Eclipse is the point. We have the stuff on the computer already because we installed it directly from the Android SDK Manager, and but this is going to find it, it's not going to copy it twice. It's going to find it, update it, and put in what's needed for the Eclipse to run properly. If you do this after you install Eclipse and you skip the step on the Android, this will take 3 hours, or 2 or 3 hours like it did before. So this is not going to take as long because it's already there. It's just configuring it to work with Eclipse. So we've already done the hard part. So, and you can see at the bottom of here now we have this integration, so you can kind of see where we've got the installed SDK platform messages, and this is our status indicator to enter on our console. So it's kind of the same thing before. I killed the Adb, which is this is the service that runs in the background that supports the API in terms of the emulator, simulator, whatever you want to call it. I think it's really technically called an emulator. But, so as we're working here, we can kind of see we're about halfway done, 51%. So 54 seconds left. I could be patient. Because once this installs, we'll take a look out here what we're doing. Click on the ad, we install the developer tools. We're going to configure Eclipse by clicking on the Windows preferences and include the Android folder in that, so that we can essentially include the stuff we downloaded and put it into Eclipse after we get done creating this. So, see how we're doing. Let's see. Remember, we're still about halfway done. It shouldn't take too much time. This is the last part of the waiting that you have to experience. And the unfortunate thing is, I guess it's not really unfortunate, but you are downloading a lot. So hopefully when you start your install of this, you'll have a good, strong connection. And don't do it in multiple sittings. Try to do it all at one time, which means it's going to take the better portion of your afternoon or morning to get everything configured. But if you do it in two different settings, you turn the computer off, you turn it back on, you install something else, you forget about something else, you miss a step, nothing works out right. If you do it all in one sitting, usually you can get it all done and then take a break after that. Next time you go, you're all done, you're all ready to go. So you can just start building projects at that point. So as we're moving along here, it's actually downloading the Sdk platform, the 4.0, which it's not getting all the other stuff we downloaded, it's just doing the 4.0, but it's configuring the most current. So you could skip that previous step and not use the Android Sdk Manager outside of it. But then you end up having to do this. If you do it out there, you do it in here, it's really all the same, actually. But this always takes longer, I think, inside of Eclipse. So. But don't worry, we already have everything else installed. We are almost done. When we hit the preferences, what we're going to do is go into Window and then Preferences, and then include the Android folder. And the Android folder I put in programming in a program file. So this is the window menu right next to the help menu. Then I'm going to go into and open up the preferences window. But I can't do anything till this finishes. And as we see, we're almost done. It doesn't make very much sense to pause the video in this case because it's almost done. So, and hopefully you're doing it at the same time. Hopefully, if you are, then you're following along with each one of the steps, and hopefully you haven't gotten any errors or anything in the process. If you are getting errors and you're running on a Windows 7 machine, well, actually, Windows 7 should look just like the XP. If you're running on a Windows 7 machine, you might be getting some errors associated with writes and files and stuff. Maybe when you open up the Explorer, perhaps when copying stuff and moving stuff over. It depends on what kind of security features you're using as well, as to what you're adding and stuff. But usually the stuff, from my experience, most of these tools install quite nicely with few errors. If there is an error, it's usually a user error of some sort. So go back through and trace your steps, and you can probably fix it. Alright, so all the packages that depend on the ADB have been updated. So all it really essentially did was update it. Do you want to restart the ADB? Sure, why not? So yes. So now we're going to restart the ADB, and you can kind of see on the bottom now, we see it working through Eclipse. So we're done. The packages are installed. So I'm going to go into the window, and I'm going to select Preferences from the menu. And Preferences is way down here, and lo and behold, look at this. I've got two options here. And the two options are essentially menu options that are going to that directory. But I need to tell the rest of Eclipse where that directory is. So I'm going to press Preferences here. And I'm going to go to Android, because Android is the one I'm really interested in looking at. And I'm going to see over here it says Android Preferences. Where is this SDK location? Well, the SDK location is not in Document Settings On or Standard Droid SDKs. Instead, it's actually, this is the list of SDKs that are below. This is the one we just downloaded. We just downloaded a bunch of other stuff though. And that stuff is going to be in Androids, and it's going to be in program files. So I'm going to just type this in. Hopefully it works correctly. Program files. Because remember we installed in program files out here. Let me just make sure I did that. I always move it around and I go, here we go, program files. And I put Android right here, and I called it Android. I took away the dash SDKs on it. And in here, this is where all of our SDKs are actually. So I'm going to change that directory to Android from program files. So if I go into here, you see program files, Android. Perfect. And I'm going to apply the change. And look at all that stuff. So instead of just the 4.0 that got downloaded and installed in the Eclipse a few minutes ago, instead of just that, I set the directory to the other directory where, remember a few minutes ago, I sat here for a couple hours while I turned the video off and waited for my download to complete because I got everything else. I got all of the APIs from right back from the beginning. So I can use them all in examples. And if yours did not bring up a bunch of stuff, it meant it didn't find anything. So what it found at the original location was 4.0. If you did not install any of the Android stuff and you don't want to, and you want to skip that step, leave it on the default directory where it installed just the 4.0. If you want to use all the previous stuff, which comes in handy, I will tell you, when you are looking at examples on the internet, not everything is in 4.0. 4.0 was released in October 2011, a couple months ago. This is the December 3rd or so. We're looking at October, probably the middle of October, November, December, a month and a half. So not every project out there on the internet is going to be written in 4.0. You're going to get an error. You're going to get backward compatibility issues if it's using something of a, that's been changed or something from the newest release. So it's better to have all the old stuff as well, the old APIs and the old packages. So that's the last time I'll reinforce that point. But again, that's what happened there. I already pressed on apply, so we're good. And I'm going to press on OK. And now I'm technically done. Now if I go here and I say File, New, and I say Project, I'm going to have the options in here. One says Android, which is nice. I can do an Android sample project. Oh, that's actually kind of a new object. That's a new feature, actually. We have projects here. Let's say samples. That's a new menu option, actually. And I can select which one. Is it going to be the Galaxy? Let me open this up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. What kind of project? Do you want to make one for a Galaxy tab, add-on? Do you want to make one for Android 2.2, real, all these other things here? Or 1.1, 1.5, 3. Let's go down here. By default, it appears that it's looking at Android 4.0. So I'm going to go next. And then now I can select a sample. Wow, this is really nice. I'm going to do the tic-tac-toe, actually. Tic-tac-toe main. Actually, it's a little tic-tac-toe game that plays. Or we could do a render script, do API demos, Bluetooth chat. Basically what this is it's supposed to be a pre-configured. I'm going to do tic-tac-toe main. So I'm going to finish. Now I've got a project here. If you followed along what I did, and for those of you who didn't catch it, I did File, New. Instead of saying Java project, let's see if I can put this over a little slower, I selected project. So the default was a Java project because we installed the Eclipse for Java. If I select on the project, if I don't want a pre-configured sample, I can go to an Android project and just create a generic project. And what I did was I opened up the Android list. So when you install new APIs, and there's a Java one in here, Java project, Ant builds and stuff, you can install, essentially what ends up happening is you get different project types depending upon the APIs that you have already installed. So I can kind of tell you certain things. So I'm going to exit out of this. I was just showing you the menu option. So now I have a little red X here, which is kind of interesting. It tells me there's a problem. If I open this up, Problem's going to tell me that inside of this file, hold on one second, let me make this a little smaller. I'm going to see what this. Sometimes that little red thing goes away when you save it, but let's see. Kind of demoing Eclipse at this point, but I really want to start out with a hello world before I even start looking at this. It's one of my imports, one of my includes. Example. You know why? It's because of the package here. I didn't install the package. Cannot be resolved. Yes, it doesn't exist. So, let's see. Let's create the package. Hold on one second. If that's going to fix it. Probably not, really. The prepackaged stuff, unless you've installed some of the example packages, let's see if this one actually. This appears actually to be working. I did not install the packages themselves or any of the default source code files. But let me just give you a little orientation to Eclipse so you know what I'm doing here actually. And I see that there are 2 errors, so I can follow this through and fix the other error for you. What I'm looking at is when I installed and I selected that example, I see this little X over here. This little X is telling me that there's an error message in this project. And this little project window over here, let me just give you my introduction to Eclipse 101 for a minute. The package explorer is going to show my project, the current project that I have open. The project itself should actually be saved. If I save it, actually, let me make sure. I believe that it is saved by default. I'm going to close the project. Yep, there it is. Yes, if I open the project, yes, so it should be saved if I'm able to close it. If I look in here, I said to save it in the Program Files, Eclipse, Workspaces. So here's my Workspace directory. Kind of zoom in. This is the Workspace directory where the project is actually going to be saved. And here's my project out here, actually. And the project out here looks like it does in Eclipse, which is kind of like why I like Eclipse. It kind of gives you a very file manager kind of look. I don't have an executable because I didn't create one. But we're actually compiling this in Java, and this is Java source code that we're actually working with. And without talking about Java yet, because we actually haven't even gotten into the language yet, and that's coming lectures, there's this thing called a package, and it's a package location that's being specified. In our particular case, the problem with this example that I loaded up is that the the packages don't exist on my computer, number one, and I didn't install any of the support files or anything that go along with this. But I think it's probably still going to work, because what I did here is I fixed one of these errors, and I'll show you what I did here in a little slow motion with the second error. The second problem is the fact that this package, com.example.android.tictac, does not exist. And so, because it doesn't exist, what I did was I went to the, if you double click on the file, the .java file, and this is just basically showing you a hierarchy. In .java, I've got a class, it's called main activity. On main activity, it's got an onCreate, it's got a start game method, and the method is calling to a package location that doesn't exist, essentially. So when I click on here, I can see in the source code on the right-hand side that opens up. So it's kind of like the old Microsoft, looks like the old Microsoft Visual C++, actually. You know, you click on the package explorer, you click on the file, and this is the main activity.java file. If I double-click on it, it opens it up on the right-hand side. What I like about Explorer is actually kind of the automated help that you get with this as well. Because the error is right here with this package down here. It's importing a package that doesn't exist. And so what I did with the first one is it actually created the package for me. And here's the package that it created. And the package, you might think of it more along the lines of a directory structure, creating an entry point for your configuration. It's a configuration issue. I'll talk about importing packages later on. But I fixed the error message by hovering my mouse over. You can probably see this when I open it up. hovering it over and then selecting one of the quick fixes that are available. The first one is this create the class game view in package, which basically says put it in that package. If I select it, what I'm doing is I'm putting it in the package that it's not in. So I'm just going to select finish on that object. On that option. And then now what it's doing is it's actually creating the package for me. It appears that I still have some error messages going on here, so this example may or may not work. Let's see what the new message is. Oh, I thought I did that one again. Let's see. Create state and type. Alright, put that in there. So I'm going to do this for all of the package errors. Let's see now what do I have here. This is actually a warning and not an error. Looks like I'm going to have more errors. I didn't install the package file, so I'm going to kind of abort out of this. This is kind of a good test. I'll do another video on how to install and run the examples. I'm going to say no, and this changes. So let's. I'm going to abort out of here. So I'm going to close this project. I'll leave it up here though because I'm going to try and fix it in a later video. But let's just start a regular old. Just a blank package that's not using anything I haven't installed yet. So if I go to project and I just go Android project and I go next, it's going to ask me for a name. I'm just going to call this first project. And I'm going to keep all of the defaults. So we're creating a new Android project and it's going to create a new project in the workspace just like the sample did. I'm not going to create it from existing source code. This is going to be a basic, an empty project. I'm going to keep the default Android 4.0 as the target type there. I'm going to say next. And then this is where I'm going to have to specify the package. So the package name, your package namespace. I'm just going to package name must be specified. A little thing up here. This is the same problem I had before, but I didn't actually create those packages. I'm going to actually use the default. So I'm going to say default. Let's see. Sample package. I can't use package. Sample default. I can't use the word default. Sample dot file project. Let's use that as the package name. So I'm going to go finish. I'm going to go up to the top. Now I get one without errors because I've created the correct package information correctly. But this isn't really going to do anything. It's an empty program. If I look at it, I've got some source in here. The source is going to be in this package called sample first. And this is going to be a basic called when the activity first is created. Doesn't really do anything. I don't have anything in here. I'm not going to create hello world for this particular video. I'm going to do this in another video. We're just basically trying to test the setup to see if the projects actually work. So we see that we've created our first project. If I right mouse click on here, I can save it, I can copy it, or I can run it. So if I run it, I've gone down here, and I can see I've got, I'll go back up here again. I've right mouse clicked, or I can click run from the menu, but I like to use the mouse. So I right mouse click, I go down to the bottom and I say run, and if I go over to the right, if I do a run as, I get a couple choices. I can run it as an Android application, which this really is. It looks like Android JUnit test is also installed. JUnit is it's a unit test. You test your classes and your configurations. And JUnit is actually open source a unit testing tool, which is kind of interesting. I'm not going to do. I'll do a later video on that. I'm not going to do that right now. Instead, I'm just going to run it as an Android application. If I pick that. Make this a little bit smaller. Now it couldn't find first package.apt, but it looks like it's updating the indexes and it's looking. And I've got the status going on over here on the right hand side. So Android launch, ABT is running normally. Couldn't find first project crowd because I I didn't actually compile it. I just said to run it. So it's still updating. Android launch. I haven't configured the ABD. Let me take a look here real quick. No compatible targets were found. Do you wish to add a new Android? Well, I didn't actually do this part, so this is a good test. AVD error. So I didn't get the AVD error down here, which is kind of interesting. Well, now it's going. It's actually, well, that's what I was saying before. It runs a bit slow. It may actually be trying to load in the background. But it was performing, couldn't find the AVD that was compatible, so I'm going to say yes. This is where I'm talking about setting up the ADB, which is basically creating a virtual machine that you're going to run as a simulator. So I'm going to say yes. And choose a running Android device. I don't have any devices here. An Android virtual machine has failed to load. Click on details to see the error. I don't see any details here either much. Let's see. Let's refresh. Alright, so I'm going to create it the old-fashioned way. I say sample AVD. Let's see. Target API 4 looks good. Name sample AVD complies. Okay, so that they don't like that name, so I'm gonna go here. It's called AVD4. See if that name's better. Create the AVD. Alright, so it looks like I've created the AVD4. I'm going to run through this, I'll run through this in another video when I do Hello World actually. But I did not create, the AVD stands for the Android Virtual Device Manager. What this is it's creating the, in this particular case, simulator or emulator that's going to run the 4.0 API that I created. And it's going to, hopefully what I'm going to get is the simulator opening up eventually. But I didn't have one created because I skipped that step. I didn't actually create it. So I just created it a few minutes ago, and I'm kind of curious. I'm going to run this again. I'm going to run it as an Android application. Now it's launching the emulator here. So now it's performing, if I look at the bottom here, I'm getting fewer errors now, which is good. Android launch, ABD is running normally, performing the sample file project activity launch, automatic target mode, launching new emulator, okay, with compatible AVD4. This is the emulator I created. I called it AVD4. Now it's launching the new emulator with the virtual device. Here it is. That's what I was saying before, and a lot of people were going, maybe people were thinking, what is she talking about, that it runs so slowly? See how long it took for this to come up. And we're still loading. We are still loading. So I'm going to wait for all these DOS screens to go away. I'm going to minimize this Eclipse for a few minutes. And lo and behold, in the background, I've got this emulator. So I had that window open too. I'm going to close this. What we're looking at down here, and the emulator itself hasn't actually finished loading either. I'm going to give this a few minutes. Because this is still loading. The emulator itself, when you select that option to run as an application, what you're going to get is this emulator that comes up that's going to mimic a phone. And it should load the emulator, load the platform, start the platform up, and load your application and run it as if it were a real phone that you were running it on. Sort of like the way the iPhone operates. However, the first time you run the emulator, as we're discovering here, it appears, and plus I also ran a project that didn't do anything, so we can't really see it work. So I'm suspecting that the emulator is loaded up correctly, and if I hit the menu button here, I'm going to get the menu of the emulator that shows up. But I'm going to be patient and wait a little bit here. because I should be getting a phone, something that looks like, here it is, Android. So, and as I was saying before, it runs a bit slow in my opinion. So, how long has it taken for this thing to go so far? Android will go across the screen for a few minutes. And it may also be running slowly because I'm running this in a virtual machine. If you remember, I loaded up Windows from a Mac partition. So this isn't really running on a native computer. However, it doesn't really run my Mac partition actually. I mean, my Parallels Windows doesn't actually run slow in my opinion. So eventually, if we wait long enough, the Android's going to go away and we're going to see a phone, something that looks like a phone menu that shows up. We might even see this application load. But it's kind of a good test of patience, I would say. So I'm going to wait because this will eventually change. I have faith. And so what ends up happening, you know, actually the first time I did this, you know, when this first came out and I experienced this, I kept clicking and closing the emulator. And someone said, it's working. I said, no, it's not working. I said, well, because I wasn't waiting long enough for the emulator to actually boot. And I'm like, oh, the emulator runs that slowly? And this wasn't even on a Windows partition. I mean, a virtual machine. This was on a native Windows machine that the emulator took this long to load. So now I'm really getting impatient. So. But because these buttons aren't working, I can tell you that it's not loaded yet. When the emulator loads, the buttons actually take you home. You can actually, you'll see the icons, and you use the mouse like you would use your finger in sort of a touch mode. So, but there's no touch screen on my computer here. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to wait for a few minutes. There are a couple of features in the emulator that don't work. One of them would be the camera, obviously, which is, you know, kind of interesting. It looks like, you know, I purposely ran the 4 just because I wanted to see it run, because I've seen all the other ones. But they had the camera button on there and the talk. These actually buttons kind of, you can't make a real call from it, but it does kind of simulate the concept. Keypad works. You can you know, type it in. You can actually simulate the SMS messaging with a real phone through the emulator, which is kind of interesting. Well, I shouldn't say, you shouldn't go emulator to emulator. I shouldn't say a real phone. You can load up multiple instances of the emulators, and you can probably see up here we've got a port number up here, 5554, port that has loaded on the AVD4 emulator. You could probably imagine that this would simulate emulator to emulator, and it does actually. But you can't use the camera, but you can definitely SMS back and forth. And I'll have a project and I'll run a video on it that SMSs back and forth emulator to emulator. Actually, I could probably set this up to run another. Let's see, actually. It's probably not a good thing to do because now I'm launching another emulator. But I'm going to show you I can get 2 emulators to run, and then you can send messages back and forth between the emulators. The second emulator is going to tax the system, I think, if it loads at all. It should load any minute now, though. No. Warning. What do we got going on here? New emulator found. 5556. Waiting. So the new emulator is loading. Data partition already in use. Changes will not be persistent. It will not persist, of course. So this first emulator came up on 5554. Now I got another one up here. You can see it's on 5556. So I've got 2 emulators loaded that are basically 2 phones, or 2 devices, I should say. That this one is not as far, obviously. In fact, I could probably kill this one, and this one would probably run faster, I believe. So here's what the emulator is taking this long to load. But let's kill this one, actually. So if you press the red button, you close the window, you're going to close the emulator. You can see that this first one, Emulator discontinued, canceling the project activity launch on that because I basically launched this one again. So I wouldn't mind seeing the emulator actually load. Well, I guess I'm too impatient. The Android definitely goes away, and we see a phone here. So I'm going to give it a few more minutes, and then I'm going to give up. And then I'm going to run a video that's going to essentially maybe use an older emulator. Maybe I've got a memory issue going on. I guess it's a true live test to see how long this actually takes. I may end up having to run this on a regular Windows partition or run it on the Mac side to show you the emulator. Oh, nope, something happened. I clicked. But, I have faith. I'm waiting for a few minutes. This Android will go away, and we will see a real phone show up if I can wait long enough. No, first emulator is still running. Alright, I'm too impatient. Alright, I am too impatient. I'm going to kill the video because this is boring. Alright, so the next video is going to be Hello World Android. We're going to see this. I'm going to wait long enough for the emulator to actually show. But one of the interesting things is the more times you run it, it actually caches some of the information. I just killed the emulator. I'm going to run it again. And we'll see that the launch actually does happen a bit faster. Of course, in this case, it's not happening. I might be running into a memory issue, which is why it's taking so long for it to load. So, yeah, here it comes. See, it actually did. I think it actually did load a little faster. So, let's see. Of course, I started it all over from scratch, but kind of curious to see if it will actually load up this time. That's a little faster, actually. Yeah, because I clicked so many buttons last time. Let's just give it a few minutes. That Android that you're seeing across the screen does go away, and the screen gets replaced by what looks like a phone. So we'll see. However, it does take patience. One does have to wait. I think what I will do is actually pause the video and start part 3, and I'll tell you how long it took, actually. So this will be the end of part 2, and then part 3 will start with this emulator showing the correct information that should show up eventually. So stay tuned for part 3.